Nora Blackwood pressed her palm against the cold metal wall of the research station, feeling the familiar vibration of the atmospheric processors humming beneath her touch. The sound had become her constant companion over the past 18 months. A mechanical heartbeat in the endless silence of Corathane, she moved through the empty corridors with practiced efficiency, checking systems that barely needed checking, maintaining equipment that could run itself for decades. The morning routine never varied. First, the atmospheric readings from her tablet showed normal oxygen levels throughout the station. Next, she checked the hydroponics bay, where rows of vegetables grew under artificial sunlight. The plants were thriving, better than the colonists she used to care for. Plants didn't ask questions, didn't look at her with accusation in their eyes. They simply grew or died based on the conditions she provided. Her reflection caught her eye in the metal surface of a storage locker. At 28, she looked older than her years. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her green eyes held a weariness that sleep couldn't cure. Wore the same gray jumpsuit every day, practical and unremarkable, just like her life had become. Nora walked to the observation deck, her favorite spot in the station. Through the reinforced glass, she could see the rust-colored landscape of Korath 9 stretching to the horizon. The planet was beautiful in its own harsh way, with crystalline formations that caught the light of twin suns and created rainbow patterns. Across the rocky terrain, wind carved sculptures from the stone, and strange flowering plants bloomed in protected valleys. She had chosen this assignment specifically because it was isolated. The research station was studying the planet's unique mineral compositions, work that could be done by one person with automated systems. No team, no colleagues, one to get close to, and no one to lose. The memory that haunts the coffee maker gurgled to life, and Nora poured herself a cup, inhaling the familiar aroma. As she sipped the hot liquid, her mind drifted to the place. She tried so hard to avoid New Geneva Colony, the terraforming project that was supposed to be her masterpiece, the place where everything went wrong. She had been the lead engineer on a team of 43 people. Families, couples, single adventurers, all working together to transform a barren world into something beautiful. The atmospheric processors she had designed were revolutionary, capable of converting hostile gases into breathable air faster than any previous technology. Everyone had trusted her expertise completely. The explosion happened on a Tuesday morning, while most of the colonists were having breakfast in the main habitat. Nora had been running diagnostics on the secondary processing unit when the primary system overloaded. Her calculations had been wrong, just a small error in the pressure equations, but enough to turn her greatest achievement into a devastating failure. 37 people died in the blast. The 6 survivors, including herself, were evacuated within hours. The official report cleared her of criminal negligence, but Nora knew the truth. Her mistake had cost those people their lives. Families who had trusted her with their futures. She finished her coffee and pushed the memories back down, focusing on the present. The work here was simple, safe, and solitary. She couldn't hurt anyone if she was alone. The unexpected discovery the afternoon brought her weekly inspection of the station's perimeter. Nora suited up in her environmental gear and stepped through the airlock into the thin atmosphere of Korath 9. The planet's air was technically breathable for humans, but the high mineral content made it harsh on the lungs during extended exposure. She walked the familiar path around the station, checking the solar collectors and communication arrays. Everything appeared normal until she reached the cargo bay's external access port. The heavy metal door, which should have been sealed, stood slightly ajar. Nora's heart rate quickened. No supply ships were scheduled for another 3 months. The automated systems would have alerted her to any approaching vessels. She drew her plasma tool from her belt, more for comfort than actual protection, and approached the door carefully. Inside the cargo bay, shadows danced between stacked supply containers. Her footsteps echoed in the large space as she made her way deeper into the bay. Soft sound, almost like labored breathing, came from behind a stack of water purification tablets. She rounded the corner and froze. A figure lay crumpled on the floor, clearly not human. His skin was silver gray, an almost metallic sheen that caught the light. He was tall, probably over 6 feet, with a lean but muscular build. His hair was white as starlight and even unconscious. His features held an otherworldly elegance. Most striking were the patterns that covered his exposed skin. Intricate designs that seemed to shift and flow like liquid mercury. They pulsed, faintly with inner light, though dimmed now, suggesting weakness or injury. Nora's first instinct was to run, to seal the cargo bay, and pretend she had never seen him. Getting involved with others only led to pain. But as she turned to leave, she noticed the dark stain spreading beneath his body. Blood, or something like it. He was hurt, possibly dying. She knelt beside him, her medical training from the colony. Days taking over, his breathing was shallow but steady, and his pulse, when she found it at his wrist, was rapid but strong. The wound was in his side, a deep gash that looked like it had been caused by some kind of energy weapon. "Who are you?" she whispered, though she didn't expect an answer. His eyes opened suddenly, startling her. They were the color of liquid gold, with pupils that seemed to catch and reflect light like a cat's. He looked at her with confusion and wariness, trying to sit up despite his obvious pain. "Don't move," Nora said, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You're hurt." He spoke in a language she didn't recognize, the sounds musical and flowing. When she shook her head in confusion, he switched to accented but clear standard. "Please don't report me," he said, his voice rough with pain and exhaustion. "Will come for me? Who will come for you?" Nora asked, though part of her didn't want to know. "The hunters," he said, his golden eyes filled with fear. "I am escaped property. They will kill anyone who helps me." The word property sent a chill down Nora's spine. She had heard stories of the slave trade that existed in the outer systems, but she had never seen evidence of it firsthand. The patterns on his skin pulsed more rapidly now, and she realized they were responding to his emotional state. "I'm going to help you," she said, the words coming out before she could stop them. "But we need to get you to the medical bay." "Why?" he asked, studying her face intently. "Why would you help me?" Nora didn't have a good answer. She had spent 18 months avoiding exactly this kind of situation, getting involved, caring about someone else's fate, opening herself up to the possibility of loss and guilt. At this injured stranger, she couldn't bring herself to walk away. "Because it's the right thing to do," she said finally. "The healing begins." Getting him to the medical bay was more difficult than she had anticipated. He was heavier than he looked, and his injuries were more extensive than she had initially realized. In addition to the gash in his side, he had bruises covering his arms and torso, and several smaller cuts that looked like they had been made by restraints. The medical bay was well equipped, one of the advantages of the research station's original purpose. Nora had him lie on the examination table while she gathered supplies. Her hand shook slightly as she prepared the antiseptic and bandages. It had been so long since she had cared for another person. "What's your name?" she asked as she began cleaning his wounds. "Jackson," he said, wincing as the antiseptic touched his skin. "Jackson Vale? And you are?" "Nora Blackwood." She worked, carefully noting that his skin was indeed warmer than human normal, and the pattern seemed to respond to her touch by brightening slightly. "What are you exactly? I mean, what species?" "Zephyrian," he said. "From the Andromeda cluster. We're a peaceful people. Good with technology and healing arts. That is why they wanted us." Nora paused in her work. "They, the hegemony. They raid our worlds, take our people. We adapt well to different environments, learn quickly. Perfect slaves for dangerous work." His voice carried a bitterness that made her heart ache. She continued her work in silence, applying healing gel to the worst of his injuries and wrapping them in synthetic bandages. The patterns on his skin gradually brightened as his pain lessened, creating a soft, mesmerizing light in the dim medical bay. "You're safe here," she said when she finished, "at least for now. This station is off most charts, and we don't get visitors." Jackson sat up slowly, testing his movement. "You live here alone?" "It's for 18 months now." She began cleaning up the medical supplies, avoiding his gaze. "I'm a terraforming engineer. I study planetary atmospheres. That is important work, he said. Life-giving work? Nora's hands stilled on the bandage dispenser. Sometimes, she said quietly. Something in her tone made him look at her more closely. You have pain too, he observed. Different from physical pain, but pain nonetheless. She met his golden eyes and saw understanding there, recognition of shared trauma. Everyone has pain, she said. Yes, he agreed. But some carry it differently. Some let it drive them to isolation, thinking they can protect others by protecting themselves. His words hit too close to home. Nora busied herself with organizing the medical supplies, but she could feel his gaze on her. There was something unsettling about how icily he seemed to read her. You should rest, she said, stepping back from the examination table. I'll prepare a bed for you in one of the guest quarters. Nora, he said, and her name sounded different in his accented voice, softer somehow. Thank you. I know this is not easy for you. She nodded and left the medical bay, her heart beating faster than it should. As she prepared bedding in one of the unused quarters, she tried to convince herself that helping him was just temporary. A few days for him to recover, then he would leave, and she could return to her safe, solitary existence. But as she heard him moving carefully through the station, his presence already changing the rhythm of her routine, she suspected that nothing would ever be quite the same again. The first night evening came early on Corthane, twin suns setting behind the crystalline mountains and casting long shadows across the station. Nora prepared dinner for two, something she hadn't done in so long that she had to think about the portions. She made a simple meal of protein bars, rehydrated with vegetables from the hydroponics bay. Jackson joined her in the small dining area, moving more easily now that his injuries had been treated. He had found clean clothes in the station's supply locker, though they were clearly designed for humans and fit him strangely. The patterns on his skin were brighter now, pulsing gently in the artificial light. The food smells wonderful, he said, settling into the chair across from her. It's nothing special, Nora replied, suddenly self-conscious about her simple meal. Just basics. They ate in companionable silence for a while, the quiet broken only by the ever-present hum of the station's systems. Nora found herself stealing glances at her unexpected guest, fascinated by the way his patterns shifted with his emotions and the graceful way he moved despite his injuries. How long were you enslaved? She asked, then immediately regretted the personal question. Jackson set down his fork and considered her question. 3 years by your calendar. I was taken during a raid on my home moon. They said I was young and strong, perfect for dangerous work in toxic environments. I'm sorry, Nora said softly. And you? He asked. How long have you been punishing yourself? The question caught her off guard. I'm not punishing myself, I'm working. Alone, on a planet where no one can find you, doing work that could be done by automated systems. His golden eyes were gentle, but perceptive. That sounds like punishment to me. Nora stood abruptly, collecting the empty plates. You don't know anything about me? I know enough, Jackson said quietly. I know someone who carries guilt like a physical weight. I know what? It looks like because I carried it too. She paused at the recycling unit, her hands gripping the plates tighter than necessary. What guilt could you possibly carry? We're a victim. I was the navigator on our transport when the hegemony attacked. I made the decisions that led us into their trap. 17 of my people died because of my choices. His voice was steady, but she could see the pain in his eyes. I told myself for a long time that I deserved whatever happened to me. Nora turned to face him, seeing him in a new light. But you escaped. Yes, finally. Not because I thought I deserved freedom, but because I realized that staying enslaved didn't honor their memory. It just wasted the life they died to protect. His words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Nora felt something shift inside her, a crack in the wall she had built around her heart. The people who died, she said slowly, they trusted me. They believed in my work. And that trust was not misplaced, Jackson said. Accidents happen. Mistakes happen. But hiding from the work you were meant to do doesn't bring them back. Sank back into her chair, feeling suddenly exhausted. I don't know if I can do that kind of work again, be responsible for other people's lives. Perhaps, he said, you could start with just one person's life. Their eyes met across the small table, and Nora felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. It was fragile and uncertain, but it was there. For the first time since New Geneva, she wasn't completely alone. Outside, the wind picked up, whistling through the station's external sensors. In the distance, storm clouds gathered on the horizon. Promising change? Inside the warm dining area, two damaged souls sat in comfortable silence, beginning to heal each other without even realizing it. The patterns on Jackson's skin pulsed softly, synchronizing gradually with the rhythm of Nora's heartbeat as the first seeds of trust took root between them. 3 days passed in peaceful routine. Nora found herself looking forward to conversations with Jackson during meals, sharing stories of their respective worlds and learning about each other's cultures. The Zephyrians, he told her, were explorers and healers traveling between star systems to help other species with their advanced knowledge of atmospheric sciences. His people valued harmony and understanding above all else. In return, Nora spoke carefully about her work on New Geneva, avoiding the painful details, but describing the beauty of watching a dead world come to life. Jackson listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions that showed he understood the complexity and importance of terraforming engineering. The patterns on his skin had grown brighter as he healed, shifting from dim silver to vibrant streams of light that flowed. Across his arms and face, Nora found herself mesmerized by them during their conversations, particularly when he laughed. The sound was musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. On the third evening, as they worked together to repair a faulty ventilation unit, the station's proximity alarm began to wail. Nora froze, her tools clattering to the floor. In 18 months of isolation, that alarm had never sounded. Jackson was instantly alert, his patterns flashing bright gold with alarm. "How many ships?" he asked, moving swiftly to the control console. Nora's fingers flew over the scanner displays. One vessel, approaching from the outer system. Small, fast, definitely not a supply ship. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. As she pulled up the detailed readings, "They're using military-grade engines and jamming our communication array." "Bounty hunters," Jackson said grimly. The patterns on his skin dimmed almost nothing, a natural camouflage response. "What?" they found. "Me? How is that possible? You said you weren't followed." "Thought I wasn't." He was already moving, gathering the few possessions he had acquired during his stay. They must have tracked the escape pod's energy signature. "I'm sorry, Nora. I never meant to bring danger to you." Nora stood frozen for a moment, watching him prepare to leave. The thought of him walking out into the hostile night, injured and alone, made her chest tight with panic. Before she could analyze her feelings, she spoke. "No," she said firmly. "You're not going anywhere." Jackson stopped, turning to look at her with surprise. "Nora, if they find me here, they will kill you. The hegemony doesn't leave witnesses. Then we make sure they don't find you." She moved to the storage locker, pulling out emergency supplies and weapons. "This station has underground access tunnels that connect to the natural cave system. We can hide there until they leave." Jackson's golden eyes searched her face. "You don't understand what you're risking." "I understand perfectly." Nora strapped a plasma pistol to her hip and shouldered a pack of supplies. "I'm not letting them take you back to slavery, and I'm not running away again." The words surprised her as much as they surprised him. For 18 months, she had been running from responsibility, from connection, from the possibility of caring about someone, enough to fight for them. But looking at Jackson, seeing the hope and gratitude in his alien features, she realized she was tired of being afraid. Into the underground, the access tunnel beneath the station was narrow and poorly lit, designed for emergency evacuation rather than comfort. Nora led the way with a portable light, while Jackson followed close behind. His patterns provided their own soft illumination, casting dancing shadows on the tunnel walls. "How far do these caves extend?" he asked as they moved deeper underground. "Several kilometers in each direction. The planet's geology is full of limestone formations that create natural shelter. Nora ducked under a low overhang, grateful for her small stature. Explored them when I first arrived, mapped the main passages, in case I ever needed to evacuate. They emerged into a larger cavern, and Nora set up a small camp using thermal blankets and portable heating units. The cave was cold, but dry, with several passages leading deeper into the mountain. She activated a scanner to monitor the station, remotely watching as the hunter's ship landed near the main entrance. 3 figures disembarking, she reported, studying the heat signatures on her display. Armed, definitely military-grade equipment. Jackson sat beside her on the thermal blanket, his warmth noticeable in the cool air. Hegemony hunters travel in teams of 3. A tracker, a weapons specialist, and a commander. They're very efficient. Well, they're about to be very disappointed. Nora pulled up the station's security systems on her tablet. Watch this. She activated the lockdown protocol, sealing all internal doors and triggering the automated security message that claimed the station was under quarantine due to atmospheric contamination. The hunters would be forced to wear full environmental suits, limiting their mobility and scanning capabilities. The clever Jackson said, impressed. But they won't be fooled for long. Long enough, I hope. Nora continued monitoring their movements as the hunters searched the station room by room. They're thorough, but they don't know about the tunnel system. For several hours, they watched the hunters systematically search every corner of the station. Nora found herself acutely aware of Jackson's presence beside her, the way his patterns pulsed softly in the darkness. The quiet strength in his voice as he explained hunter tactics and behavior. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, during a quiet moment. "Really?" Nora considered her answer carefully. "For 18 months I've been hiding from life, convinced that caring about people would only lead to more tragedy. But meeting you made me realize that isolation isn't protecting anyone. It's just another form of cowardice." Jackson's patterns brightened slightly. "You are not a coward, Nora Blackwood. A coward would have turned me away that first day. A smart person would have." She replied with a wry smile. "Perhaps, but wisdom and intelligence are not always the same thing. The hunt intensifies near." Dawn, the hunters changed tactics. They had found the tunnel entrance and were preparing to follow it into the cave system. Nora and Jackson gathered their supplies quickly, preparing to move deeper underground. "They have tracking equipment," Jackson warned as they packed. "My biosignature is distinctive and will have to be more creative." Nora led him through a narrow passage that opened into a vast underground chamber. The caves are full of mineral deposits that interfere with most scanners. If we stay near the crystal formations, they shouldn't be able to get a clear reading. The chamber was breathtaking, filled with towering crystal formations that glowed with their own internal light. The crystals responded to their presence, brightening slightly as they passed. Jackson's patterns seemed to resonate with the crystal's energy, creating a beautiful light show in the darkness. "Your planet is incredible," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "It's not my planet," Nora replied automatically, then paused. "Although, I suppose it's been home longer than anywhere else recently." They found shelter in a small alcove surrounded by the tallest crystals. The formations created a natural barrier that would hide them from direct observation, while the minerals would mask their heat signatures. As they settled in to wait, Nora realized how close they were sitting, shoulder to shoulder in the small space. "Nora," Jackson said softly, "there's something you should know about Zephyrian biology." "What do you mean?" "Patterns on my skin. They respond to emotional states. When I'm near someone I care about, someone I trust, they synchronize with that person's heartbeat." Nora looked down and realized that his patterns were indeed pulsing in rhythm with her pulse. The realization sent warmth through her chest that had nothing to do with the heating unit. "How long has that been happening?" she asked. "Since the second day," he admitted. "I tried to control it, but the response is involuntary when the connection is strong." She studied his face in the crystal light, seeing vulnerability there that he rarely showed. "What does it mean for your people?" "It means—" He hesitated, then met her eyes steadily. "It means I am developing feelings that go beyond gratitude. Feelings that could complicate everything." Nora's breath caught. She had been trying to ignore her own growing attraction to him, telling herself it was just relief at having company after so long alone. But looking at him now, seeing the gentle strength in his features, and the way he looked at her like she was something precious, she couldn't deny the truth any longer. "Maybe complicated isn't always bad," she said quietly. Before either of them could say more, the sound of voices echoed through the cavern. The hunters had found their way into the chamber and were scanning the crystal formations methodically. The choice Jackson immediately moved to the front of the alcove, positioning himself between Nora and the approaching danger. His patterns dimmed to almost nothing, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. "If they find us," he whispered, "I want you to run. Promise me." "I'm not leaving you," Nora whispered back. "Promise me," he insisted. "You have a life to live, work to do. Important work." Nora gripped his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin and the steady pulse of light from his patterns. "We leave together, or not at all." The voices grew closer. Through the crystal formations, they could see lights moving in their direction. One of the hunters was calling out in standard, offering rewards for information about the escaped Zephyrian. Nora made a decision that surprised them both. She activated her cum unit and sent a signal directly to the hunters.
"What are you
doing?" Jackson hissed. "Trust me," she said, then spoke into the cum. "This is Dr. Nora Blackwood, chief researcher at this station. I'm prepared to negotiate for the alien you're seeking." Jackson's eyes went wide with shock and hurt. For a moment, his patterns flashed with pain before dimming completely. "Dr. Blackwood," came the reply, "we appreciate your cooperation. Please, come out where we can see you." Nora squeezed Jackson's hand one more time, hoping he would understand. Then she stepped out of the alcove with her hands raised. The three hunters were exactly as Jackson had described: professional, well-armed, and completely without mercy in their expressions. Their leader, a tall woman with cybernetic implants, smiled coldly. "Where is the Zephyrian?" she demanded. "Safe," Nora replied. "And he'll stay that way, unless you're willing to deal." "You're in no position to make deals, human. Actually, I am." Nora held up a small device. "This is a seismic resonator. One signal from me, and these crystal formations will collapse, bringing down half the mountain. Your target will be buried so deep, you'll never recover him." It was a complete bluff. The device was actually a mineral scanner, but the hunters couldn't know that. She watched their faces, hoping her years of experience with high-pressure situations would serve her now. "What do you want?" the leader asked. "Safe passage for both of us off this planet, and a guarantee that you won't pursue us." The hunter laughed. "Impossible. The bounty is too high." "Then you can explain to your employers how you lost their valuable property under a mountain of rock." Nora's finger hovered over the device. "Your choice." For tense moments, they stared at each other. Then, from behind her, Jackson's voice rang out clear and strong. "She's not bluffing," he said, stepping out of the alcove. His patterns blazed with protective fury, and neither am I. In his hand was an actual seismic charge he had taken from Nora's mining equipment. The hunter's eyes widened as they recognized. "The real threat? You would destroy yourself to deny us?" the leader asked. "To protect her?" Jackson looked at Nora with such intensity that her heart stopped, without question. In that moment, Nora understood that whatever happened next, her life had fundamentally changed. She was no longer the woman who had hidden on this planet to escape responsibility and connection. She was someone worth protecting, someone worth fighting for, and for the first time in years, she was ready to fight back. The standoff continued, but Nora felt a strange calm settle over her. Whatever came next, she and Jackson would face it. Together, the gamble pays off. The cave fell silent, except for the soft humming of the crystals around them. Nora stood perfectly still, her finger poised over the fake detonator, while Jackson held the real seismic charge with steady hands. The three bounty hunters exchanged glances, calculating odds and potential losses. "You're both insane," the leader said finally, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. "Probably," Nora agreed, "but we're also desperate, which makes us dangerous. The question is, how much is one escaped slave worth to you when weighed against your own lives. The weapons specialist, a thin man with nervous eyes, shifted his weight. Commander, the bounty isn't worth dying for. We can tell the hegemony the target was killed in a cave collapse. And forfeit our fee? The leader's cybernetic eye word as it focused on Jackson. This Zephyrian is worth more than you know. His biosignature indicates rare adaptive abilities. Jackson's patterns flared brighter with anger. I am not a commodity, to be bought and sold. Everyone is a commodity if the price is right, the leader replied coldly. She raised her weapon toward Nora. Drop the detonator, human. Your friend can come with us quietly, or we can take his body back for genetic sampling. That was her mistake. The moment she threatened Nora directly, Jackson's calm shattered. Within human speed, he hurled the seismic charge toward the largest crystal formation, while diving to shield Nora with his body. Everyone down, Nora shouted. The explosion wasn't large, but in the confined space of the crystal chamber, it created a chain reaction. Formations began to crack and sing, their resonance building to a dangerous frequency. Chunks of stone fell from the ceiling as the entire cave system began to destabilize in the chaos. Nora grabbed Jackson's hand and ran toward a passage she had noticed earlier, one that led upward toward the surface. Behind them, she could hear the hunters shouting over the noise of falling rock. Did you know that would happen? Jackson called as they climbed through the narrow tunnel. I hoped, Nora replied, pulling him along. The crystals are resonantly linked. Break enough of them, and the whole network becomes unstable. They emerged from a hidden cave entrance on the far side of the mountain, gasping in the thin air of Korth 9. In the distance, they could see smoke rising from the direction of the crystal chamber. The hunter's ship was still parked near the research station, but the underground passages they had used were now completely blocked. They might survive, Jackson said, looking back at the sealed cave. They might, Nora agreed, but they'll be trapped down there for days, and their ship's autopilot will eventually assume they're dead and return to base. Jackson turned to her, his pattern shifting from alarm gold to something warmer and more complex. You risked everything. For me? Why? Nora met his golden eyes, seeing her own reflection in their depths. Because in the past 3 days, you've shown me who I used to be, who I could be again, someone who fights for what matters instead of running from it. The words hung between them in the crisp morning air. Then Jackson stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. Nora, he said softly, on my world. We have a concept called Zephyros Kalani. It means wind-bound hearts to people whose souls are meant to fly together. What does that mean exactly, she asked, though her heart was already racing. Means that, sometimes, across all the vast distances of space, two people find each other at exactly the moment they both need saving. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone with infinite gentleness. The patterns on his skin blazed with warm light, pulsing in perfect synchronization with her heartbeat. Is that what we are? She whispered. I would like to find out, he said, and leaned down to kiss her. The first kiss, the kiss was everything Nora hadn't known she was hoping for. Gentle at first, questioning, then deeper as she responded. Act. Jackson's skin was warm against hers, and the patterns of light dancing across his features made her feel like she was kissing starlight itself. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. Jackson's patterns had shifted to brilliant silver and gold, more beautiful than anything she had ever seen. We should probably get moving, Nora said, though she made no effort to step away from him. Probably, he agreed, but his arms tightened. Around her, they stood there for another moment, holding each other in the alien dawn before practicality reasserted itself. They needed supplies, transportation, and a plan. The hunters might be trapped for now, but more would come eventually. Back at the research station, they worked quickly to gather everything useful. Nora packed her most important research data. While Jackson collected survival gear and technical equipment, they avoided talking about what came next, both knowing that whatever future they might have together would have to be built somewhere far from Korth 9. There's an old cargo shuttle in the maintenance bay, Nora said as they loaded their supplies. It's not much, but it's space-worthy. I've been keeping it maintained in case of emergencies. Where would we go? Jackson asked. The hegemony has contacts throughout this sector. Nora pulled up a star chart on her tablet, highlighting several systems in the outer rim. The free colonies. Independent worlds where people don't ask too many questions about your past. I've heard they need terraforming engineers, and they would accept a Zephyrian. They accept anyone willing to work and contribute. Species doesn't matter as much as skill and character. Jackson studied the chart, his patterns shifting with hope. It could work. It's far enough from hegemony space that we might actually disappear. Then that's where we go. Departure, the cargo shuttle was small and cramped, but functional. Nora ran through the pre-flight checklist while Jackson secured their supplies and equipment. As the engines warmed up, she took one last look at the research station that had been her refuge for 18 months. Any regrets? Jackson asked, settling into the co-pilot seat.
About leaving?
No. She initiated the launch sequence, feeling the shuttle lift off the planet's surface. About staying here alone for so long? Definitely. As they broke atmosphere, Korath 9 fell away beneath them, becoming just another planet among millions. But instead of the loneliness Nora had felt when she first arrived, she felt anticipation. For the first time in years, the future held possibility instead of just survival. Tell me about the free colonies, Jackson said as they settled into their course. Diverse, independent, founded by people who wanted to escape the control of the major powers. They value innovation and cooperation over politics and profit. Nora adjusted their trajectory, aiming for the closest hyperspace jump point. Scientists, artists, refugees, anyone looking for a fresh start. It sounds too good to be true, maybe, but it's worth finding out. The jump to hyperspace was smooth, and once they were safely in the corridor between stars, they allowed themselves to relax. The shuttle's small cabin forced them into close proximity, and Nora found herself acutely aware of every movement Jackson made. What happens when we get there? She asked during their shared meal of ration packs. We build something new, he said simply. You practice your engineering, I use my technical skills. We find a place to belong. Together, Jackson's patterns flared. With warmth, if you want that. Nora reached across the small table and took his hand, marveling at how perfectly their fingers fit together despite their different origins. I want that. I want everything with you. New beginnings. The free colony of Haven's Rest was exactly what they had hoped for and nothing like what they had expected. The planet was a patchwork of different environments, engineered by settlers from dozens of species to accommodate diverse needs. Crystal cities rose from desert plains while floating gardens drifted through perpetual mists. The spaceport was a bustling confusion of languages, species, and cultures. No one stared at Jackson's alien features or questioned Nora's decision to travel with him. Here diversity was the norm rather than the exception. First time to Haven's Rest? The dock worker who processed their landing permits was a blue-skinned Altarian with kind eyes. You'll want to check in with the settlement office. They help newcomers find housing and work. The settlement office was located in the city center, a building that managed to blend architectural styles from at least 6 different worlds. The human woman behind the desk looked up from her computer with a smile. Welcome to Haven's Rest. I'm Dana Martinez, settlement coordinator. What brings you to our little corner of the galaxy? We're looking for a fresh start, Nora said carefully. I'm a terraforming engineer, and Jackson has technical skills in atmospheric systems. Dana's eyes lit up. Perfect timing. We have 3 new settlements in development that need exactly those skills. Are you looking to work together or separately? Nora and Jackson exchanged glances. Together, they said simultaneously. Even better. There's a position available for a terraforming team on New Eden, one of our most ambitious projects. They're converting a desert world into agricultural land using innovative atmospheric processors. Nora felt her heart skip. Atmospheric processors. Yes, cutting-edge technology. They need engineers who understand both the technical and environmental aspects of large-scale terraforming. For the first time in 2 years, Nora felt excited about her work instead of afraid of it. When can we start? The work they were meant to do New Eden was a world of endless possibility. The desert landscape stretched in all directions, broken only by the gleaming towers of atmospheric processors and the green patches where terraforming had already taken hold. It was challenging work, requiring both innovation and caution, but it was exactly what Nora had been meant to do. Working alongside Jackson made everything better. His Zephyrian knowledge of atmospheric science complemented her human engineering skills perfectly. Together they developed new techniques for soil conversion and moisture retention that increased the terraforming efficiency by 30%. More importantly, they were helping families and communities build new lives. Every square kilometer they successfully converted meant homes for refugees, farms for settlers, hope for the future. It was meaningful work, the kind that honored the memory of those lost on New Geneva instead of running from it. Their living quarters were simple but comfortable. A small apartment in the settlement that they shared with growing contentment. Evenings were spent planning the next day's work, cooking meals together, learning about each other's cultures and dreams. "Do you ever miss your home world?" Nora asked one evening, as they watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Jackson's patterns pulsed thoughtfully. "I miss the beauty of it, the peace my people knew before the raids began. But home isn't just a place, is it? It's the people who matter to you." He turned to look at her, his golden eyes reflecting the evening light. "This is home now, with you." Nora felt warmth spread through her chest, the same feeling she got every time he looked at her, like she was the most precious thing in his universe. "I love you," she said, the words coming easily now, after weeks of feeling them build inside her heart. "Zephyros Kalani," he replied, pulling her close. "Wind-bound hearts forever." The proposal 6 months after their arrival on New Eden, Jackson came home from the terraforming site with an unusual excitement in his patterns. They had just completed their most challenging project yet, converting a particularly stubborn section of alkaline desert into fertile soil suitable for the colony's expansion. "Nora," he said, as she looked up from her engineering reports, "there's something I want to show you." He led her outside to their small garden, a patch of green they had created together, using the same techniques they employed on the larger terraforming projects. In the center, where they had planted earth flowers alongside Zephyrian wind blooms, he had arranged stones to form intricate patterns that matched the designs on his skin. "Gosh, she's beautiful," she said, studying the careful arrangements. "What does it mean, in Zephyrian culture, when someone wants to join their life permanently with another? They create a patterned garden that tells the story of their love." Nora's breath caught as she realized what he was saying. "Jackson, these stones represent our journey," he said, his voice soft with emotion. "The dark ones are the pain we carried when we met. The silver ones are the healing we found together. And these," he pointed to stones that seemed to glow with their own inner light, "these represent the future we could build." He knelt in the center of the pattern, his hands shaking slightly as he reached into his pocket. What he pulled out wasn't a ring, but something far more meaningful. A small crystal from the caves of Korath-9, carefully carved and polished into an intricate pendant. "This crystal sang when we were together in the caves," he said. "It resonates with both our life energies. In my culture, it means we are truly compatible, that our hearts beat in harmony." Nora knelt beside him, tears blurring her vision. "Oh, you asking me to marry you? I'm asking you to be my partner in everything. Work, life, dreams, all of it." His patterns blazed with hope and love. "Will you accept this bond, Nora Blackwood? Will you fly with me through whatever winds may come?" She looked at the crystal pendant, then at the man who had transformed her life simply by needing her help. The woman who had hidden on Korath-9 was gone, replaced by someone stronger, braver, and infinitely happier. "Yes," she said, taking the pendant with trembling hands. "Yes to everything." The wedding and beyond their wedding was held in the terraformed valley they had created together, surrounded by friends from dozens of different worlds. The ceremony blended human and Zephyrian traditions, with vows spoken under both Earth stars and Zephyrian wind songs. Dana Martinez officiated, declaring them partners in life and work under the laws of Haven's Rest. As they kissed to seal their bond, Jackson's patterns exploded with joy. Creating a light show, that reflected off the crystal formations they had imported from Korath 9. You know, Dana said, as the celebration continued around them, the colony board has been talking about offering you both permanent positions. Department heads for the entire terraforming division. Nora and Jackson exchanged glances, having discussed this possibility many times. What would that involve? Nora asked. Overseeing terraforming projects across 12 different worlds, training new engineers, developing new techniques. Basically, everything you're already doing, but on a much larger scale. It was everything Nora had once dreamed of. Challenging work, important responsibilities, the chance to help shape entire worlds. But more than that, it was something she could do alongside the person she loved most. We accept, they said. Together? And Dana laughed. I figured you would. Congratulations, Department Heads Blackwood Vale. Epilogue. 5 years later, the communications array on New Eden picked up signals from across the sector every day. But the message that arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning was different. It was from Korathine, transmitted by an automated beacon. Nora read it twice before showing it to Jackson. The hegemony bounty hunters were rescued after 8 days trapped in the cave system. The report classified you as deceased, killed in a terraforming accident. Jackson's pattern shifted with amazement. They gave up the hunt. It gets better, Nora continued reading. The mining company is resuming operations on Korath 9. They want to hire our department to design new atmospheric systems for the colony. They stood together in their office, looking out at the thriving valley that had once been barren desert. In the distance, they could see the newest settlement taking shape, another community of refugees and dreamers building something beautiful from nothing. Should we take the job? Jackson asked. Nora considered it. Returning to Korath 9 would complete a circle, transforming the place where they had fled for their lives into somewhere new families could thrive. It felt right, like the final chapter in a story that had begun with fear and loneliness, but had become something magnificent. I think we should, she said, slipping her hand into his. Together. His patterns pulsed with the warm light she had come to associate with home, love, and endless possibility. Outside their window, the twin suns of New Eden set behind the mountains they had moved and the rivers they had redirected, painting the sky in colors that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. They had run from love and pain, both of them broken and afraid. But in finding each other, they had discovered something greater than safety or healing. They had found partnership, purpose, and a love that transcended the boundaries between worlds. Together, they would continue transforming empty spaces into homes, dead worlds into gardens, and their own careful hearts into something brave enough to embrace whatever the future might bring. Is the language of the Zephyrians. They had become Zephyros Kalani, wind-bound hearts flying together through infinity, and that was exactly where they belonged.